And welcome back to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast with your host, Kristin Heron. Hi, everybody. And hello, Kristin. It's good to see you. How are you?
I'm good, Bill. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. You know, this is yet another series, if you will, in the episodes of your podcast where we talk about business development.
Yes.
And this one came up interestingly enough because you were talking about clarifying your ideal client and the process and where it fits into business development. You had a little bit of a revelation. Why don't you share that with us?
Yes. So we kicked off this calendar year, 2026, with episode 49, where we talked about where to start with business development. And so I was coaching an advisor on his business development efforts, and it was our first session. And I was about to kind of leap into the where to start and realized that he was unclear on something really important, which is who was the ideal client he was going to go out and look for. So who was it that he was going to do? We had outlined a bunch of exercises and ways to create an opportunity list. And I realized in our conversation that he did not quite know who that person was. And he works, it makes sense. He works for a larger firm. He's been servicing a number of different kinds of clients. The firm is big enough that it can have specialties with multiple types of clients.
Okay.
But when you're doing business development and you personally are going to go out and work with connections and try to find people, it is helpful to narrow that down to an ideal client that you want to try to identify, that you want to attract in, that you can communicate with and share the value. And so I thought it would be helpful for our listeners to back up so that if you are saying, I want to create my opportunity list to get out in the world, to just check in and run through a few questions if you are unclear on who it is you are trying to reach. If you're really looking at like, wow, I have no idea who my target audience is and where to direct our marketing and business development, all these different things, then I will direct you way back to episode 5 with Kristin Luke, where we talked about how to identify a niche. And that's a more, extensive process. And we're getting into what you want to build there and how you want to focus. Here it's saying, all right, I've worked with some different clients. I'm going to start doing business development outreach. Who would be ideal for me? And so it starts with something very simple, which is who are your 5 favorite clients that you work with? And I think I talked about this with Hillary Gale as well on the podcast episode with her. Who are you looking forward to talking with? Who are you excited about? And then I also like to overlay who are my 5 most profitable clients or most lucrative clients, right? The ones that are providing, the highest revenue or the most profit, depending on how you look at that. And what are the common elements among them? So as you're thinking like, okay, what life stage are they on? What's their attitude? What problems can I solve? What are the areas of advice that fit? So, this one should ring to mind a few people right away. And you go, okay, I have them in my mind of thinking about who I want. So I think that's a great place to start.
Okay.
To get going.
Does personality matter in this? I mean, that's a silly question, actually, but it's like, you're talking about who you like talking to. So I would imagine personality has a fit there.
Yeah. And I think, many advisors come in and go, well, I would like to work with people who are open to delegation but anyone who's hiring someone probably is open to delegation. However, there are, I have other people who have said no, a-holes, blank. I try to keep it clean here. They're just like, we can't work with jerks, right? We don't want to work with type A. We don't want someone who's going to question everything. So it can be like this can get into sort of values-based things that people are interested in. Like if you have a certain alignment to certain values about family, a stewardship or family or various different ways of thinking, this can be very important. And just, the way you're going to interact with people, because you're going to be talking to these people a lot. So we want to spend time there to say, all right, what am I looking for? A lot of times in this one, and kind of a follow-up question is more about the traits you want to avoid.
Okay.
Than the ones that appeal to you. I mean, we all want to talk to nice people who are friendly and grateful and happy and satisfied in all those ways and enjoy conversation and feel the benefits. But it's really about you don't want someone questioning you all the time. You don't want someone who's a jerk, who doesn't treat their partner well, or who is demanding in unreasonable ways, things like that.
Well, it sort of seems like you're going to filter out a lot of that if you begin with that really simple question you started with, which is, who are the 5 clients that I really enjoy working with the most and talking with the most? That seems like a pretty good way to sort of filter out a lot of those things you're just talking about.
Right, because it's really just about what is it that you like about them.
Yeah.
And that can be often a personality trait. Hey there, it's Kristin. Quick break. If you're enjoying the show and you want more, head on over to fulladvisorcoaching.com/resources. You can download the toolkits that I have there and join the free insider community. You'll be the first to hear about new trainings, fresh podcast episodes, and I share with you real-world strategies that I see working for advisors right now. That's fulladvisorcoaching.com/resources. Go sign up. It's completely free. And now, back to the show. And then another great question is, what type of person is your firm best suited to work with, given the service offering that you have and the value proposition that you have, so that as you're going out there, not only are you creating a connection with that person based on, your interest or your experience, but you can also pull in all of the collective experience, wisdom, content, service, connections that your firm has. And we see this work really well, especially if, say, you're working with, I talk a lot about firms that work with business owners, right? And so business owners approaching exit. And if your firm's set up to offer a service where maybe they help with valuation, or they help with training the next generation, or you have specialists on your team who have dealt with different industries within exit planning for businesses, this gives you a way to go, okay, as I'm talking to people, not only can I make a connection, but I have a really good story to tell, because we have a lot of rich content, stories, and clients that I can draw from to be able to attract these people in.
I'm curious about something. You talk about the kind of people that your firm services, and you give a great example of like business owners and business owners looking for an exit. Is it okay for you to say, I don't want to work with people who don't have kids, or they're not planning for college, or I want to work specifically with folks who are planning for retirement and they've got a lot of that stuff behind them? I mean, how do you sort through that?
Yeah, actually, that's actually a really good point. I have a client who works specifically with people in the military and they're retiring officers. And he actually brought on another person to the firm to focus on the college planning piece, because he was, more removed from that, less interested in that piece, and said, okay, I'm going to be able to, have conversations with people who are transitioning into their retirement from the military, or in their retirement, complete retirement.
Yes.
But as we get into college planning conversations or working with younger military people, he brought in other people in that way. And so those different people, one of them is very highly focused on working with the families that are planning also ahead for college planning and taking advantage of some of the things available for military personnel in that way. But I think that is a really important piece, as well as this gentleman I was working with. He was saying, he has a kid going to college, and I think another one in high school. And so his natural conversations around town and in natural group is around, with people who are Gen X, who are in that sandwich generation, dealing with aging parents, trying to launch their children, that's rich with content around financial planning, financial advice, and all kinds of things there. It's his natural market as well. It aligns well with the firm clientele that he's trying to reach. And he had just gone through the whole, how do you get merit scholarships? What do you have to go through? How do you trade off whether you should go to private school or public school, high school and college? And then how do you trade that off with saving for retirement, and all of those complexities that were really rich. And that's where his light bulb went off to say, okay, our firm can help a lot of people in the realm of who have like $3 to $5 million based on where they live, where they are, and what they're looking for. And he was so focused, Bill, on how do I find people with $3 to $5 million versus what are trying to get to the account, and how do I get and quantify those accounts and move those accounts, versus what are the questions and situations those people are in right now? What are they dealing with money, with knowing that, if I'm talking to people in this particular area with these particular attributes and problems, they're likely going to fit in this category of high net worth clientele, right? So he detached from the dollar amount and went more so to what are the problems that people are facing? What are the conversations I'm having? He's in that audience of people and around them. And we're talking private high schools and nice, neighborhoods and golf clubs and various things where you're like, okay, I can already make the leap that most people here likely have the amount of assets that I need. They may not, you don't know. But it's more about now he's comfortable because he can talk about the problems and how to help them and how to navigate them and not worry about the dollars behind that. And that was game changing for him. Yeah. I mean, the relief that he had at the end of our conversation, just walking through this, which it actually surprised me because I hadn't heard it articulated quite like that before. Exactly. And I was like, yes, exactly. And he is the most friendly, outgoing, easy to talk to gentleman, but he was getting tripped up over that piece. And I do hope he's listening, because I'm really excited for him and what he's heading on. He's newer working with me, though. By the time this airs, he'll be a master.
Exactly.
But anyway,
he'll be ruling. But I'm glad you clarified that, because one of the questions that came up in my mind earlier was like, do you really want to focus on the dollar amount? Because I don't know that the dollar amount is where you want to be. Because I think if you identify the other things. Yeah, the sort of dollar, assets under management can kind of take care of itself, right?
Yes. I mean, you have to have a good sense of, will these people fit in the area where our firm meets? Because a lot of firms have minimum amounts that they work, just given that, fee structure starts at a certain level for profitability or service level. But, there's a big difference between, if you're targeting ultra high net worth families and multi-generational families, those are different issues and solutions to the problem than mass market looking for trading off very basic, making sure we understand our retirement income and just how much we can spend each year and what that looks like. So there's a spectrum of that, but within the firm and knowing, okay, roughly we're looking for people in this zone, then what are the problems? I mean, and we'll get into that in a second, but what are the problems or aspirations of this clientele? What are the things you can help with? So we'll get into that. But I think one of the things around that is, as you're thinking through people that fit this audience, are there certain kind of another slice or subset of that are there certain professions or job types or companies where you've had experience. Maybe you've worked with multiple clients in a single company. I've had that happen very much, where people get really good at dealing with, say, like the oil and gas industry.
Sure.
And they'll have worked with, BP executives. I can't name another oil and gas company right now. Chevron, whatever it might
Exxon,
be. Yeah.
There's other
lots of different ones.
There are lots of them. This is a really good point. And I mean, you kind of hinted at this earlier when you talked about one of the folks you had worked with actually had a military background and an interest in helping military personnel. I happen to have friends who are now retired officers. It's a different group of people. They've got different kinds of needs. They have different kinds of finances that are associated with it too. So that it's like, no, I can understand that. And it's like, I've known financial advisors who focus their businesses entirely on people in the medical profession because they understand that because each of these has a specific set of circumstances and innuendo tied to them that are different from each other.
Right. And in the case of looking at an advisor who has been charged with or wants to add business development to their skill set and wants to start contributing, whether, if they've been a servicing advisor for a while, or they've moved into a new firm, or they're just looking to expand their own revenue opportunities. When they start looking at, okay, here's here's the firm. There's all kinds of people who could fit the bill, even within a sub niche like this. Which ones in particular are you able to connect with and identify with that will really give you kind of that? If I have to go down and write 10 people's names down, I'm trying to get enough detail and understanding of who fits that profile that I'm able to do that in a way that has kind of a through line, and I can support, and I have backup and content and all of the things I need there to help that. And so, when you have worked with a number of people at a company, you're in great shape. When I had my financial planning firm, I had I ended up getting multiple doctors who came from UCSF medical school.
Okay.
They would often be a practicing doctor in some form, and then educating too, because it's a teaching hospital.
Yeah.
And so they'd have like two different kinds of retirement, and it was somewhat complex in the benefits. So once I learned that, then as soon as I met, someone who was in UCSF medical system, it was very simple. Okay, well, first of all, we need to figure out your 457 versus your 403. I don't remember exactly, Bill, but I knew in the day very clearly, and how you delineate and what's available to you and how it works. So it was really helpful. And then sometimes people say, oh, you know what? I'll work with anyone, but I can't stand attorneys. Just can't stand them, and you're like, okay, then let's, we won't proactively reach out in that way. So there could be certain things that, where you have an affinity to your point, oftentimes people are like, oh, my wife is a surgeon, and she, or she's an OBGYN. And so we're plugged into that area, or I'm often out and, we're often socializing in that group.
With that particular group of people. Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah. It kind of leads into the, another question is like, what are the natural markets? This one is what people usually think about, like where you are, stage of life, hobbies and interests. When we talked about that, in episode 49, when we talked about putting your opportunity list together, I remember specifically we were talking about like, don't go out and join the Weekend Warriors Club if you're not athletic and have no interest in it. but there might be things you're already doing that you're like, here are the very natural interests. Like you're like, for me, I was, if I were a financial planner, and back when I still had my firm, now that I'm engaged in, I was engaged in my daughter and son's wrestling team and very engaged there. So perhaps parents around that, where I just naturally would be sitting in the stands, talking with them. I was on the board at musical theater, a musical theater group. So for young children, so it would have been a natural way just to be like, oh, and here's what I do. So these were all things that, just fit within, these are things I'm doing anyway. What what might be an overlay here. So, and then, things like geography or relationships, things that are, show up there.
Yeah, it's funny. I've known financial advisors who, work with clients across multiple states. Mm-hmm. And then I've known other financial advisors who really like to keep things close to home. I never get the sense that there was a right way to do that. It was just sort of like what you naturally felt good at and what you obviously had the knowledge to deal with.
Right. And I think an important thing here too is to think about anything you want to, any of these. Who are you drawn to? Who's a natural fit? Who appeals to you? And then who do you want to avoid? It's just as important, like the whole attorney thing, for one example. I loved working with attorneys, but other people, no, they didn't, But yeah. I think that is also just an important thing. I know, again, just another example, when I worked with new and expectant parents, families with young children, they would, I'd work with the families and they'd feel very comfortable and they'd say, "Oh, can you help my mom? She's approaching retirement. Oh. I really feel good about you. I'd love to have you help my mom." And then I would say, "Look, it's not an area where I carry expertise. It gets into things like Social Security and Medicare and retirement income planning and all of these things that personally, I didn't want to learn about or know about beyond the basics, right? Because that wasn't an area of expertise or interest for me because I was focused on the front half of life and accumulation and all that. So, I had to refer them out, but I was like, I knew that. So if I were out doing business development, looking for people, I'm showing up at the birth and baby fair, I'm not holding the Medicare training at the library. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, as we wrap up this particular episode, it goes back to something you've discussed several times over, and you've made references to them in different episodes. Know your niche, as it were.
Yes.
And explore it. So bring this all home for us, and
I will.
We'll talk about what's next.
Client profile. So ideal client profile, ultimately, as we heard from the example where he's like, I've never, we went through this exercise and my client said, I've never been so clear on who it is I need to connect with or want to connect with. And I think if you can bring it down to the need of the person, right? Like, what do they ultimately aspire to and what do they ultimately fear? And think about those things. And then you're able to launch into all of the exercises around how do I talk with potential people? What's the opportunity? What am I saying? What does that look like? So, for example, I like to have people answer this question in first person for their clients because it really helps them step in the shoe of the client, right? Mm-hmm. So like they might, one of the statements might be, we want to be financially ready to retire before 65, even if we don't stop working then. That's a popular one. Or while our kids are in college, we want to live abroad and pay for them to come visit us. So you're moving into more personalized things. Or what are some of the worries? Like, what if one of us starts to show signs of dementia? Or what if we retire and realize it was too early? What if I spend too much money going to Europe and then I get sick later and can't afford it? So these are things like, and the reason I have people take this exercise to this detail is because that's going to spark the stories that you can look for within your firm. Like, what stories can you tell about clients you've helped, and then sort of develop case studies or examples that you will use them when you do your business development outreach. So once you have this clarity on the type of client and you really kind of dig in to be really clear on these types of elements that appeal to you and that you can really connect with, you're able then to work and start your business development outreach strategy.
That's great. And for those people who are listening to this podcast, who may want to reach out to you, in the interest of perhaps having a little personal coaching, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way is to go to fulladvisorcoaching.com and click that button in the upper right-hand corner that says request a call. And we can just have a conversation and see where you are and what next steps may make sense. You can also check out the other episodes on the podcast and subscribe as always, so that the next one shows up in your feed. We love having the listeners. We love getting feedback, ratings, reviews. So we'd love to hear from you in that way.
No, absolutely. And I want to emphasize, if you're interested in what Kristin's talking about, reach out to her. It does not cost you anything to have that initial conversation. It's a good conversation. Do it.
And we'll work through things like this, and I will ask you some of these questions on that free call. So we just talk through it, and I try to help you look at things from a new perspective. So I look forward to engaging if that's something you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's do. And she's as much fun to talk to as it seems, by the way. I enjoy every time we get together to do a podcast together. So until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Kristin and everybody behind Full Advisor Coaching. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen, and we'll catch you next time, right? Because remember, you have a choice today. You can go out today and make it a great day, or not. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Full Advisor Coaching, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the follow button so you'll never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can become a part of the Full Advisor community, visit fulladvisorcoaching.com. Remember, stay connected and get notified as soon as brand new episodes release. Click the follow button now. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kristin Harrod or Full Advisor Coaching.